This child became known as the Devil's Daughter and is the youngest convicted female murderer in Britain. Oh, hi there, stranger. Today I'm going to be telling you about the case of Sharon Carr. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. Sharon Louise Carr was born on the 21st of December 1979 in Belize. She was one of four siblings who was raised in extreme poverty by her mother and stepfather, as Carr never knew the identity of her biological dad. The family moved to England in 1986 and settled in Camberley in Surrey. The home life was disruptive, with both parents being violent to each other and to the children, and then their marriage would come to an end after a serious incident of DV. Carr's stepfather had seemingly told her mother that he didn't want to be with her anymore, and she reacted to this by pouring boiling fat over him, burning both of them in the process, with both mother and stepfather ending up in hospital. The mother was charged with that assault, but I don't know what the upshot was. And on top of the violence that they were experiencing in the home, Carr's mother allegedly believed in the supernatural and practiced voodoo and taught Carr all about those things and also about animal sacrifice. Even with all that to deal with, Carr's school life started off just fine. She was polite, well-mannered, friendly, sociable, and helpful to her teachers. As she grew, she became more troubled. She'd always preferred the company of older boys, and she had had violent outbursts in the past. But as she grew, she became very badly behaved. She didn't like authority. She was very disruptive. Pretty standard stuff for a certain age group, but with Carr it was so extreme that by age 11 the school had contacted the social services and Carr was placed into foster care. But she only spent a month there and then was returned home. And then there was even more disruption in the home when her mother got a new partner who had two daughters of his own. So as she grew, her behaviour remained much the same, except now her violence had escalated and she was hurting animals. This is just a side note, and it's not to be sexist, but this is the first case I have come across where a very young female hurts or kills animals, and it just really shocked me. I don't know why it shocked me so much, but it did. Carr had stabbed a couple of neighbourhood cats and had also decapitated a neighbour's dog using a shovel. There was also a suggestion that she had fried live hamsters. She would ritualistically sacrifice animals, believing that it gave her power over others. Maybe she got this from when her mother supposedly taught her about the supernatural. By age 12, she was totally out of control. She had very little supervision and basically did whatever she liked whenever she wanted. And that brings us to June 1992. Katie Ratcliffe was an 18-year-old hairdressing apprentice looking forward to the rest of her life. Katie was also from Camberley. On the evening of the 6th of June, she went out to Ragamuffins nightclub with some friends to let her hair down, and in the early hours of the 7th of June, she was making her way home. 12-year-old Sharon Carr was out that night too, and she had a 16-centimetre knife with her. She saw Katie and attacked her ferociously, causing around 30 wounds to the unsuspecting young woman. Some of the wounds were inflicted with such force that they went all of the way through Katie's body. Carr mutilated Katie's private areas and then robbed her jewellery. Carr would later admit that after that point she had the help of two friends who not only aided in the moving of Katie's body but then took her 5 miles away to Farnborough. And Katie's remains would be found in Farnborough later that morning by a group of boys. The brutal violence inflicted upon Katie made police believe that they were looking for a man. Before anyone gets their panties in a twist, it is very fair for the police to have assumed that they were looking for a man, okay? The police believed that that man was probably in his 30s, someone big and strong enough to overpower Katie. There was a clear sexual motivation and, just the scale of the violence. And of course, this mistake would cost the investigation dearly. Years would pass before they knew who their true perpetrator was. And Carr would unfortunately attack again before they got to her. Exactly 2 years after Katie's murder, on the 7th of June 1994, Carr attacked a 13-year-old classmate completely unprovoked. The attack happened in the toilets of the school they were both attending, and Carr attacked the other child, stabbing her in the back and puncturing one of her lungs. 5 other students came into the bathroom and saw what was happening. They intervened and stopped the attack, probably saving that child's life. All reports indicate that Carr was happy, smiling, and joyous while she was committing the attack. She was thankfully arrested after the incident, and the victim did survive. When she was questioned by police, Carr admitted that she liked to stab cats and that she had beheaded a dog. She was sent for an assessment, but she tried to strangle two of the medical professionals. Carr was sent to a couple of different psychiatric units, but she continued to attack other females, and so authorities made the decision to send her to an all-boys unit. She was still under 16 at that point, and she was moved again in September 1995 to a young offenders unit, and it was while she was at that unit that the truth about Katie Ratcliffe came out. Carr boasted about killing Katie. She spoke about it to friends and family on the phone and even wrote about it in her journals. Some of those diary entries are as follows, quote, "I am a killer. Killing is my business and business is good." Another one says, "I was born to be a murderer. Killing for me is a mass turn on and it just makes me so high I never want to come down. Every night I see the devil in my dreams, sometimes even in my mirror, but I realise it was just me." 4 years after the murder, she wrote, "I bring the knife into her chest. Her eyes are closing. She is pleading with me, so I bring the knife to her again and again. I don't want to hurt her, but I need to do violence to her. I need to overcome her beauty, her serenity, her security. There, I see her face when she died. I know she feels her life being slowly drawn from her, and I hear her gasp. I guess she was trying to breathe. The air stops in the back of her throat. I know all her life her breathing has worked, but it does not now, and I am joyful." Another entry says, quote, "Oh damn, I've got a taste for red rum, and God, I want to get drunk." And that all came from a child. Child of the corn, what the... These admissions, though, would lead to staff alerting the police and then finally to the arrest of Sharon Carr for the murder of Katie Ratcliffe. And Carr told police about the murder, laughing through the details. And she knew things that only the killer would know, like what items of jewellery had been taken from Katie and specifics about the mutilations that the police had never released to the public. And Sharon Carr would eventually be charged with Katie's murder in May 1996. The two friends who had helped Carr that night alibied each other and were never charged. They alibied each other and were never charged. To this day, their names have never been released. In March 1997, after a month-long trial at Winchester Crown Court, the jury found Sharon Carr guilty of the murder of Katie Ratcliffe. The jury had taken 5 hours to come to the decision, and they decided that this act was not manslaughter. And that makes Sharon Carr the youngest ever female to be convicted of murder in Britain. She was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 14 years, but Carr is still behind that door. She's applied for parole at least 4 times, and the last time she was turned down was 2022, 2023, something like that. This reminds me of Britain's longest serving female inmate, Maria Pearson, who was sentenced to a minimum term of 11 years but has served nearly 40. Violent women just don't seem to hide it as well as violent men, and good. Because 31 years later, Carr still isn't rehabilitated. One thing I did read about Sharon Carr, though, is that for all of her years locked up, she's actually spent very few of them in actual prison, instead serving most of her time in secure specialist settings, whatever that means. And another thing that makes this case really stand out for me is that whilst female murderers are much less common than male murderers, females that kill strangers are really unusual, but a female child that kills an adult stranger has been labelled as unique. And sometimes I really wish we could just have a good poke around inside their brains and see, what is it? Of course, that would be unethical, and I'm not saying that we should. I'm just, there were many shocking factors to this case, and whilst I did know about it, I hadn't researched about it, so thank you to those strangers who recommended it to me. And as always, rest in peace to the victim of this case, the beautiful Katie Ratcliffe. And as always, stranger, please let me know what you think of this one in the comments, and if you've stayed with me up until now, then thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.